Unlawful hunting of wild birds in Washington state. What are the rules? Are there criminal penalties if we violate the law? Are there infractions? Are there special penalties? And how can you avoid a big headache if you're deciding to go out and hunt? If you're interested in that topic, this is the video for you. So stay tuned. My name is Lance Fryrear, and I'm a defense attorney in Linwood, Washington. I have a law firm that's been defending people charged with crimes all throughout Washington state for more than 20 years. And we defend a lot of hunting charges, including unlawful hunting of wild birds. So I'm putting out these videos to educate the public. There's not much out there, so if you find this useful, please like and please subscribe, and more people will get the help that they need. So I'm just going to jump right into it. What is the law about hunting wild birds in Washington state? Well, first of all, you have to have the right type of license and the right type of permit to make sure that you're even eligible to hunt a wild bird. A wild bird is basically defined as what you might think any bird that's wild in its natural state, right? We're not talking about hunting a pet bird. We're talking about birds out there in the wild. And while you need to check with Fish and Wildlife because the laws change, basically you're going to need a small game license, and then if it's migratory birds, you're also going to need a permit for migratory bird hunting. You're going to need to be in the right time and the right place, and there's lots of rules you have to follow about where you can hunt, but we're going to assume for purposes of this video that you're hunting at the right time and the right place, and you have the right license, permits, and tags. If you have questions about specifically what you need, it's beyond the scope of this video, so make sure you check with Fish and Wildlife about that. But most violations, if we run afoul of the law about hunting a wild bird, most of them are crimes. There's simple misdemeanors, which means maximum penalty of 90 days in jail, and gross misdemeanors, which means maximum penalty of 1 year in jail. So the misdemeanor penalty, the misdemeanor charge is called unlawful hunting of wild birds in the second degree. So in this state, bigger numbers, believe it or not, are less serious crimes. Like second degree is less serious than first degree. So unlawful hunting of wild birds in the second degree can happen in two different ways from what the law says. One of the ways that it can happen is if you are hunting for the wild birds and you do not have the proper permit, license, tag, etc. So that's a crime if you're hunting for birds at all and you never got the proper license or permit. That's a crime, a simple misdemeanor, whether or not you've taken or possessed any birds. You could just be pointing your gun up, and if they can prove that you were hunting for a bird, you're out there doing that and you didn't have the proper permits or tags, believe it or not, that's a crime. And usually it's Fish and Wildlife officers that enforce this, and so typically they might give you a ticket. They might seize your weapon or anything that they have. They could try to forfeit it, but you're not going to have a court date right away. Typically that's going to get referred to a prosecutor, and so you're going to want to reach out to a defense attorney if that's what happens. You can also be charged with unlawful hunting in the second degree if you end up having the proper permit. In other words, you own it, you bought it. They can look in your wild record to see that you bought it, but you don't have it with you. In this case, if you don't have the license or permit with you, but you did buy it, then it'll be a crime only if you either possess a bird that's been shot, or that you shot one yourself, whether or not you possess it. So you have to have less than 2 times the possession or bag limit. So if the limit is 4 birds and they catch you with 1 and you are properly licensed but you don't have your license on you, that's also a crime, unlawful hunting of wild birds in the second degree. If the limit was 4 and you had 8 or 9, you had 9, let's say, then that would be a more serious crime because you have more than 2 times the limit. That would be a gross misdemeanor. We'll cover that next. So again, for a simple misdemeanor, either you never bought the license and you're hunting, or you did buy the license, you don't have it on your person, and you've actually taken a bird. Let's say you don't have your license on you, but you've not taken a bird, and that would be an infraction. That would be a non-crime, and you would get a ticket that you could pay as opposed to having to go to court. So what's the more serious charge? The more serious charge is unlawful hunting of wild birds in the first degree. Okay, the first degree that applies anytime you have more than 2 times the limit. So if the limit's 4 and you have 9, regardless of whether you have your license on your person, whether or not you bought it or not, just period, that's first degree, which is a more serious charge. It's a gross misdemeanor, maximum penalty of 364 days in jail. So what we can, let's say there was some species you couldn't hunt, and the limit was 0 and you had 1. Well, 1 is more than 2 times 0, so that would also be first degree. So they're complicated rules, but I'm going over the general rules of unlawful hunting of wild birds. So as you can see, 3 situations, 2 ways to be charged with second degree, 1 way to be charged with first degree, and now there's one fourth thing we need to worry about. There's a special rule if you violate the rules against using toxic shot. So if you end up using toxic shot, something that you're not allowed to use for hunting wild birds, then you get a special penalty, a special charge. In that case, they'll charge you with a gross misdemeanor. There's also a wildlife penalty that gets assessed if you're convicted. That carries a $1,000 extra penalty. And to make it even worse, you lose your license to hunt for 2 years. So if you get charged with something involving failure to use non-toxic shot, whatever you do, make sure you don't plead guilty to that. We've seen that charge, and it's really important we avoid a conviction for that charge, because not only does it cost you way, way more money, but it also removes your right to hunt for a couple of years. So moving on, what do we do about the situation, right? Let's say we ran into a problem. We made a mistake. What do we do about it? Well, as I already said, you probably don't have a court date just yet if they're referring you for a crime. If they're giving you a ticket for a crime, or they tell you that you're going to be charged with a crime, reach out to an attorney. In some counties, the prosecutors are instructed that they would really not prefer to file this. That's what their supervisors will tell them. There's actually some manuals that say that. So some counties are going to file every fish and wildlife violation. So reach out to an attorney so they can let you know what to expect, and they can start trying to improve the situation. If you only got a ticket, be careful about paying the ticket. We mean an infraction with a money amount on it, because if you get so many tickets in the hunting and wildlife and fishing area, you could lose your license by having too many violations. So again, you're going to want to look at the rules and check with an attorney. Just don't go pay the ticket. You may have to fight the ticket if you've already had some prior run-ins with fish and wildlife. But let's say you have to go to court. You've gotten the court date in the mail. It tells you to go to court, and you figure, hey, I can just go to court and explain what happened. Well, that's not really how it works for crimes. Again, unlawful hunting wild birds in the first degree or second degree are both crimes. And so the first date you're going to go to is called an arraignment, right? An arraignment is where the judge is going to take a guilty or not guilty plea, and typically they'll only take a not guilty plea. Most courts are set up to take guilty pleas at arraignment, and you can go to jail. So it's important that they make sure you have an attorney to help you. So if you're going to go to a pretrial hearing next, and then if you have an attorney, the attorney is going to try to do several things to help you with your case. At least that's what we would do. Number one, we're going to look at your prior history, right? How long have you been hunting? Have you been hunting for 30 years and this is your first problem? So therefore we can say, this was an oversight. We thought that the people at Fred Meyer gave us the correct license and they didn't. That's a pretty common thing wherever you're buying your license, Fred Meyer, anywhere, that you ask for everything and someone's inexperienced and doesn't give you everything for your license. We can maybe argue that. If you're a brand new hunter, we can also argue, hey, you didn't understand and we're going to put you through some classes so you can learn, right? So what we want to do is use whatever we can to point out to the prosecutor that you didn't make a purposeful mistake. It wasn't like willful, I don't care. Usually that's the case. Usually hunters are responsible. Usually hunters are trying to obey the law. Because it's important to them, and the laws are there to sort of preserve all the natural resources for everybody and to make sure that we have wildlife into the future. So that's one thing that we could do to try to bargain with the prosecutor based upon your history. to either make sure you're not convicted or at least make sure nothing bad happens to you if you are. A second thing we can do is we can look at the facts, right? What is the allegation? Can they actually show that you're the one who did something? I remember a case that I've seen, where there was geese that were shot, and who shot the geese, right? And well, our person's walking around the area, so they must think it's that person, so they cite them, but there's really no proof, right? So depending on the case, we might have a factual defense. And again, that's why we just don't go plead guilty to things. That's why attorneys try to help make sure that you're treated fairly. And finally, let's say we did make a mistake, we admitted it, things like that. Well, sometimes, I already mentioned this, we can have you do some classes. Maybe we can have you do an education class, a hunter safety class. Maybe we can have you do something so the prosecutor has an option to respond to your case without convicting you. Because, while it's just a hunting case, it still is a criminal charge, right? And people generally don't want to have criminal convictions on their record. So I hope you found this useful. The law changes all the time. So, I'm filming this. This is New Year's Day right now. 2022 is when I'm filming this. And so, if you're in this type of situation, make sure that you don't panic. Most of these hunting cases are not treated with a very heavy hand by prosecutors, so we can usually have a good outcome. But if you're in the situation, feel free to reach out to us. We'll listen to what happened. We'll identify a way forward, and we'll be there for you. Thank you.